Now turning off my camera,
Yeah.
I think. Can I do that? Where is it? So yeah, so you can hear me still, yeah?
Yeah, and now I can all see you.
Oh.
Yeah, I can still see you, right? That's better.
And my
Much
big
better.
my plan's not working. Here we go. Now we're good. Right. So here we go. So before we start, just to say, Bjorn, that this is going to be kind of going into a little program. It's going to feel like a live interview. So
Yeah.
we need, if possible, quite short, clear answers, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's not easy for an academic, you know.
Exactly. That's why I'm telling you, because I know all these qualifying phrases and research references. I've spoken to many academics. Don't worry, I know you lot. Luke, what about you? Anything to say?
No, not at all. I think we're pretty set. Yeah.
Okay, Bjorn. So I wanted to just we're talking about conspiracy narratives today. I know we don't use the term conspiracy theories anymore. I wanted to ask you, why are young people particularly vulnerable to conspiracy narratives? And why is it important to address this at the moment, right now, during the COVID crisis?
So they are vulnerable because they often have, they can lack cognitive abilities to really judge information correct. On the other hand, we also know that older people also are vulnerable for conspiracy theories. So I won't say that only children are, but also adults are.
Why is it important to address this at the moment during this crisis? Why do we think it's an important time to have this discussion and for you to be doing this work right now?
Because conspiracy theories can lead to undermining the public health system at this moment. So that's the main course, I would say, the main point.
And also, has the crisis to some extent exacerbated the context, I suppose, the situation around conspiracy narratives? It's become a big thing, right? You've been focusing on it for a long time, but it's now in the public consciousness and it's seen as a big factor in a lot of negative things. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I think the COVID-19 crisis can be seen as a wicked problem. This means that there is no one solution. And it's also a current problem. And the scientists are currently working on solving the problem, and lots of different types of information also is coming out. And this also reinforces conspiracy theories, because scientists, to some extent, also can disagree about the facts. And this can reinforce conspiracy theories, because they will say even scientists disagree, so who can we trust? So this is, I think, is a big problem, because in the end, even if you have the facts, people have to trust the facts or the fact bringer. And this is the big problem right now. People do not trust the fact bringers anymore, or the scientists, or some people at least.
How do you manage to deal with the sheer magnitude, the amount of what is out there in terms of conspiracy narratives, and also the fact that it's in a digital space? This isn't an area where people aren't interacting necessarily. So how do you deal with that magnitude and the fact that it's a digital problem often?
So what I do not focus on the digital problem right now, because I focus on teaching and youth work. And they do experience that it is a problem, but most children, at least what teachers say to me, are interested in conspiracy theories, but not severe, deep conspiracy thinkers. So there's an opportunity they are still open to discuss their ideas. And when you become a real conspiracy thinker, you're not open anymore. So the challenge is to keep the minds open before they are closed.
And for us in the RAN network, practitioners and policymakers, What's the connection in your mind or in your practice with conspiracy narratives and violent right-wing or violent extremism?
Well, it's all mixed up right now. Everything seems to mix up because of COVID. So, for example, we have terrorist attacks. They seem to mix with right-wing thinking. That seems to mix with conspiracy theories. So it's becoming a kind of a cocktail. And it's very difficult to say, okay, this is more right-wing, extreme right-wing, or this is conspiracy thinking. It's very difficult to separate all those different streams, and they're all mixed up.
Thank you. You work with teachers. How vital a role do they play in the fight against countering violent extremism? How important is it to get their buy-in? You know, how important is it to get their understanding that this is important?
Teachers are extremely important because they can build a relationship over time with students. That is something that a government, for example, cannot do. But they also cannot solve the problems of society. So they can deal with it, they can help, but in the end, they are not the only ones that have to take action in relation to extremism.
But do you find that, like, sometimes you have to convince them that it's an issue, or is it important for you to have a national policy on this? I mean, how does it work? Because some teachers may also believe in some conspiracy theories. So how does that work on a sort of larger scale level for you? What needs to happen to make it successful?
Well, when one believes in a conspiracy theory or in another type of perspective that you do not agree, you can say, okay, stop believing this, but this will not work. Even also in government policy, you can say, okay, we do not tolerate this, but still people believe it. So in the end, you will have to have a dialogue. And of course, when people become violent or use violence, then you have to say, stop. But before that, what you have to do, and it's what I said before, is that you have to go into the dialogue still when the minds are open for dialogue, before there is a disclosure, a cognitive disclosure. I do not met many teachers that are really believing in conspiracy theories, but I do see teachers, of course, that are also critical about policies in relation to COVID-19. So I think we have to be aware that not all criticism on COVID-19 government policies in Europe is conspiracy thinking. So there's a balance as well.
You also focus on post-COVID narratives. Can you tell me about this and why it's so important to be really anticipating what's next?
Well, for me, it's not exactly about post-COVID narratives. For me, it's the cocktail. For example, now with all the terrorism going on, what I see is that things seems to connect in this cocktail. So, and we have to address this more general polarization. So I try to see the broader picture and how everything goes together and how we should address that. Because only focusing on COVID or conspiracies, I think we have to see the general polarization in society as a whole. And we have to think, how can we deal with this general polarization that is going on in our Western societies?
How much do you think there's been a shift in thinking about our priorities as practitioners and policymakers during this crisis?
Can you explain your question again?
Yeah. For example, understanding the importance of digital communication, realizing the kind of negative nature of conspiracies and conspiracy narratives. There's been a shift in an understanding really about what factors contribute to violent extremism and the kind of journey. And I wondered if you feel there's been a shift in thinking as a result of the situation we're in. People are now looking slightly differently at the problem because they've got a different social, physical, societal structure at the moment. And so it's in making us address things that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise. I just wondered what you thought of that.
Well, I think in the end, the mechanisms are still the same, but everything is reinforced due to COVID-19 because the fear and uncertainty in society. These are basic emotions that lead to conspiracy theories, that lead to heightened distrust towards other cultures, towards outgroups that are not your own. It leads to being more conservative in your morals. So it's the context that really shows us, what a context can do, a context of uncertainty with the minds of people.
And what's your sort of subjective take on where we're at right now in terms of, obviously you're out there meeting young people, you're meeting teachers. Is there a sense of a crisis in terms of some of, in terms of violent extremist thinking, or is that something that we can't really, we have to wait to understand fully? I mean, what's your analysis of the situation?
I think for us, it's important for teachers to focus on the middle group and not on the extremes. Because when you go into teaching only about extremism, then you might reinforce that there are only extreme positions possible. But you should also focus on the middle ground, because still lots of all the people, but also students, they want to go for this middle ground. So even by discussing extremism or conspiracy theories, that can be counterproductive. So you really have to balance, how do I address extremism, conspiracy theories, fake news, in order not to get students even more interested in conspiracy theories or in extremism. So there's a balance as well.
How do you strike that balance? It sounds like it can be difficult. Is it depending on the school or depending on context, or where's the balance?
Yes, it really much depends on the school and who's in your class and who's the student. For example, when a student is really extreme in his ideas and you have a class, you might reconsider if you want to have the discussion with the whole class, or you want to have the discussion only with this specific student, because the other rest of the class will also be influenced by this specific student. So yeah, these are things you have to carefully think about. And in the end, always in the end, it is the teacher that knows the students the best, that knows his context the best, that knows his own beliefs and morals the best. It's him to decide, or her to decide. What we can do as trainers and researchers is to provide them models, literature, research, to help them making the right decisions at that moment for that situation.
And how necessary, how important is it to have a kind of multi-agency approach to this? For example, family is important. There are other institutions that sometimes need to come into play when we're looking at addressing issues and polarization. So do you fit into a larger network yourself, or how does that work?
Yes, I think it's extremely important that we work with larger teams. So what you see is that students that leave school, go to the online environment, or go on street. So I'm involved in a couple of experiments, I would say, with also youth workers working in the school, and the youth workers go with. And when the students are out, they will also go with the students on the street, but they are also online. So I think when teachers and youth workers are not online anymore, or this world is totally behind what we can see, we miss a lot of things that are going on in the world of youth.
And finally, how important do you think it is to have a cohesive, unified approach to this kind of work across Europe, so we're all sharing our best ideas and practices, and there's a cohesion across the continent?
Yes, it's very difficult. For example, we have written a letter about the terrorist attacks in France. And this letter is very much about the Dutch context. And we had a lot of discussion, because if you will read this letter in France or in Turkey, it can be very, people will have a very different interpretation of what the letter will mean. So I think it's good, it's really good to share our knowledge and what we do. But one unified approach will be very difficult because we have to adapt it to each situational context and each nation. So yes, but overall it might be very difficult to have one similar approach.
Okay, great. Luke, that's fantastic, Bjorn. Really great. And actually, very short answers for an academic. That blows my mind. Highly unusual. Great stuff. Luke, have you got anything to add there?
That's quite comprehensive. Just a couple of very simple questions. I don't know if it helps or not, Ed, these answers, but one would be, which groups of people are particularly vulnerable to conspiracy theories? Can you describe, who are the individuals who are most vulnerable?
So you're most vulnerable if you distrust the government already. So if there is already kind of skeptics, then you're very vulnerable. So there's a relation over there.
And I guess are the young people more vulnerable than older people in that sense then?
Well, that's really difficult to say. Also in relation to fake news and other kinds of stuff, it really depends. So you also see, for example, that certain conspiracy, like anti-vaccine conspiracies, are more believed by older people, and other types of conspiracies are more believed by younger people. So there are differences there as well, but this is also something we still have to find out.
Okay, and then final question from me, actually. You talked at the start about keeping minds open. How do you keep minds open? I mean, how do you equip teachers with the skills and the tools needed to have difficult conversations in the classroom?
Yes, in order to keep the minds open, it's important that you invest in the student when you're not talking about conspiracy theories. So you talk about football, you talk about the parents, you show interest in their personal lives. And in the end, when you have a difficult conversation, you will benefit from the trust you have built by building up these conversations that were just normal about their everyday life experiences. And then they might trust you as well and speak to you personally about their ideas and even more their extreme ideas.
Great. That's it from me, Ed. Okay, great. One last thing, Bjorn. I need you to, I'm going to welcome you and I want to say hello to you, and I want you just to respond into your phone because we're going to use this for the interview. And then I'm going to say, thanks very much and thanks for joining us and goodbye. And I want you to answer that into the phone as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sorry, it's a bit weird. It's like the magic of video. Okay, so I'm going to say hello to you first of all, and then just nod and sort of say hello to me back into the phone. So, Bjorn, thanks so much for joining us, and it's really nice to meet you. Hi.
Hi, thank you.
And then we'll just do it again with just hi instead of thank you. So great to meet you. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us. Really interesting questions. Really interesting answers. Really interesting answers to complex questions. I think you've given us a lot to think about. Thanks so much for your time and goodbye.
It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, great. I'll put my camera on. That's it. I just wanted to pick up. Look, you can switch on too. So that.
Okay, I will leave my camera on.
You can turn it off now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. That was the magic of television there. Just the hello, goodbye bit. It's like.
Yeah, I know.
We'll weave it all together to make something beautiful. And thanks for that was really, really good. I thought it was very video friendly actually. And that's really important.
That's right. Yes, I can be there are lots of nuances, and there will be lots of criticism if scientists will
I know.
see this video, but this is the real world. So yes.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Our job is, the job of video is to give somebody, it's like a starter course in a restaurant.
Yeah.
Where you're just giving a little sample of something. Mm-hmm. And then you have to go to purchase the ideas.
Yeah.
Like online and on the RAN website. And that is what we're doing here. We are fishing in to get people to like show interest. And you've done that really well,
Okay.
You're going to do a bit more filming on Monday, is that right?
Yes.
I loved you when you were saying the lamppost and stuff. I mean, It was like That's it, man. That stuff is like gold dust. I mean, I love that sort of stuff, and it's if you can get that movement and get some more of that stuff, and just get some shots and talk about what we're looking at. So this is where I work. This is this is my office. It's a bit boring, but you know.
Will. Yes,
and then we'll put that to a really 1-minute package before this interview, and it'll work really well.
Yes, I will.
Well, you've done amazing. I wanted to just thank you very, very much for your contribution.
Yes, I will send it by using a WeTransfer again, the same as yesterday.
Yeah, you've got the Excel transfer one as well if you want. That's my link, yeah? I sent you the email. If it's a big file, the video file shouldn't be too big, right? It should be about a gigabyte.
I think it will work. I will see.
Okay. Shout me if there are any issues, let me know, yeah?
Yeah, then I will let you know.
Power. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bjorn.
Bye-bye. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.